Trade talks continue today in Stockholm as the president's tariff deadline approaches for some on August 1st, China, August 12th. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick joins us right now. It's always good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Will you bear with me for just a second before we talk China? Let's talk about the EU deal. And I know you think it's just great and a big victory for the president. That's your take. I'm going to let you explain why. And I'm not going to defer to the Democrats or legacy media on whether it's a good deal or not. I'm going to go right to who it really seemed to upset, and that's France and Germany. And even the European Commission president, you heard what she said. I thought it was very telling. She goes, look, I know this is awful for us. It's the best I could get. I'm trying to salvage them. So I think that indicates, and I don't want to be too jingoistic or America first, but to me that indicated that the president was able to get a pretty good deal.
Exactly right. The president knew how far he could go, and he went exactly that far. The thing about our president is he's got that intuitive nature when he's sitting across the table and making a deal. He knows how far he can push it. I mean, imagine they committed to $750 billion of energy purchases, natural gas and oil and nuclear, during his term. They committed $600 billion of companies investing in America, and then 15% tariffs. They will pay 15% pretty much across the board. And we, of course, have an open market to the $20 trillion European market. It's 5 times bigger than any other, Japan and India, 5 times bigger with 450 million people. It was a masterclass by President Trump.
I think that and everybody's saying it, that the decision to accept the 15% level was in sharp contrast to where they were recently, just weeks ago, with a much more adversarial tone. And they came to the realization that President Trump thinks that these 15% tariffs should be permanent. And my question is, can you make a strong rationale for why that is the case? Wouldn't it, if it was 0-0 on both sides, and even, got some other things extracted from the EU. Do we want this 15% to onshore? Is that what it's all about, bringing stuff back here? Or is it about all the revenue that gets collected from whomever you want to say is paying it, whether it's, you say it's foreign countries or companies here or consumers or whatever? Why is that the status quo, that it's going to be permanent?
Okay, so Europe has a $235 billion a year trade surplus with us, which means at the end of every year, they end up with $235 billion worth of dollars. They sell us more stuff than we sell them. And you know what they do with those dollars? They just buy America. We're basically having America sold out from under us by continuing to have these $1.2 trillion globally trade deficit, which every economist says should not be able to happen. But it's been staying with us for more than decades. So it's got to end. The president is changing it. So his view is you can onshore to get rid of it, or you can pay a tariff to get rid of it. But let's figure out how to get rid of it. And the key to why the Europeans did the deal is autos and pharmaceuticals. I mean, remember, we are the payer of the world, right? All pharmaceuticals, they all make their money by selling to America. And President Trump has been very, very clear. If you're going to sell here, you're going to produce here. And so the Europeans got in front of that freight train and said, we'll pay you 15% for that, but we don't want you to rip all of our companies out of Europe and move them to America. So while the French have got a lot to say, they were able to protect Sanofi from staying in France, because if they didn't do this deal, Sanofi would become an American company.
Secretary Lutnick, I think there are still some questions and uncertainties that remain around it. I know both sides have agreed that this is a framework, not legally binding at this point. But if you listen to some of the EU leaders, they'll say that there are some uncertainties still out there. And I just wonder where you think they came down, just in terms of steel and aluminum tariffs still being there at 50%. What happens with pharmaceuticals eventually? Will they be maintained at 15%, or are there additional tariffs that come in there? Some of the certain natural resources as well. And they have said that they can't promise that these pretty hefty expectations for purchases and investment, those massive targets, whether they'll be able to hit them or not, because they're relying in large part, on private funding. There's still a lot to work out. They've said that sometimes these agreements usually will take years. Do you think that will be the case here?
Well, historically, these kind of agreements would take a decade. and they, of course, wouldn't come to fruition, right? Barack Obama spoke to them for his whole term and never got anything accomplished. President Trump works on a different time frame and on a different clock. He wants to get things done now, and he uses the power of the American economy to get things done now. So pharmaceuticals was key. It was important for them to have pharmaceuticals be part of the deal at 15%, because President Trump is going to come out in the next 2 weeks with his pharmaceutical policy, and it is going to be higher. Basically, if you are not building your plant in America where we pay for pharmaceuticals, you are going to pay a massive tariff, because why should we pay for your drugs and you make them overseas and you make your money overseas? At least if we're going to pay for your drugs, you're going to build them in America. So they got ahead of that. They got ahead of pharmaceuticals. They wanted to get ahead of cars, because 25% on autos means, as you've heard Donald Trump say it, you're going to build your cars in America. No one can afford to export and pay a 25% tariff. So the Europeans found the highest level that they could survive with, because President Trump would not have cut it otherwise. And they could keep their autos there. You know, they'll do many build plants here, but they don't have to move them all here. And that was the model. They can move a lot, but they don't have to move it all. Right. So I think when we talk about it in a year, you'll see the Europeans are satisfied with it, because when they see the full Donald Trump policy, which they understood, they knew this was the important deal for them. And, of course, it was sensational for Donald Trump, because it proves everything he said about tariffs is absolutely true, and you can see it right here, right now.
Mr. Secretary, do you think the negotiations are over? And the reason I say over, meaning there's big questions about other issues I think that the president would like from Europe, for example, around big tech and the regulations on them and digital taxes and all sorts of other things. And so I raise the question, is it possible that there's additional conversations about some of those issues, and that those issues get brought back into a different discussion around tariffs, so that the ceiling becomes 15%, but actually it could go lower, perhaps, if, in fact, there were other agreements that were reached? Is that even possible? Is that a chess piece?
Well, I wouldn't say lower. I mean, natural resources, the president did include, when he does a deal, he does include, if you grow something and we don't grow it, that can come in for zero. So if we do a deal with a country that grows mangoes or pineapples, then they can come in without a tariff, because coffee and cocoa would be other examples of natural resource. So an example for Europe that they brought up is cork. You know, like the cork on that we all see in our houses. Cork can come into the United States without a tariff. And do I expect to continue to be talking to the European Commission's trade people? Yeah, they called me this morning to talk about what are other things to talk about. Digital services taxes and the attack on our tech companies, that is going to be on the table. It wasn't on the table today. There are other things that they would like steel and aluminum, that were not included in this deal, that will be on the table. There's plenty of horse trading still to do. But the fundamentals of their $20 trillion economy are set. We sell into them without a tariff. They sell into us for 15%, but they protect themselves on autos, they protect themselves on pharma, they protect themselves on semiconductors. And those three protections were fundamental for the European Commission. And anybody who picks on them is going to learn over the next 2 weeks why the people who did that deal were really smart to get this deal done with Donald Trump.
You can wrap China into this, but other countries where things are, I mean, Canada. What about Canada? I don't know what they're feeling now at this point. India, is that imminent? What do you expect to happen? And what's really happening with China, in your view, right now? Are things going okay with some of the president's comments about fake news, says I want a meeting with Xi? It's not true. We thought that there was eventually going to be some type of meeting between President Xi and President Trump, and that was going to be where we really got down to brass tacks.
Well, I think with respect to other countries, what's happened is many countries had made us okay offers to open their markets, 50%, 30%. And then the president said, no, I want them open. And then they get up to 75%. And the president said, I want it open. So now the price of a deal with the United States of America is black and white. Completely open markets. He wants to make sure that Americans can sell their goods overseas. He's tired of all those years where it was unfair and asymmetric against us. He wants to right the wrong of the last 80 years of trade policy, and he wants to do it now, and that's what he's doing. So are there deals on the table for him to consider? Yes, but he knows that he can just set the rate and set the price and move on, and he said that over and over again. We put in front of him the deal, he sees the deal, and he decides, do I want to do a deal with India or I don't? And that is up to him. We've done our job. They've made offers, but these countries came to the table slowly from what President Trump was hoping for. But of course, from their perspective, no one's moved as fast as the world has moved with respect to Donald Trump. He has moved the world in a way that no one can imagine. He's done this in 6 months. This is amazing, and I am, as you can tell, I'm having the best time working for Donald Trump.
We're out of time, but so you think it's more likely that musical chairs, people are looking around thinking, no one wants to be last, do they? I mean, you think we're going to hear more?
No.
Well, China's going to be tough.
All day.
China's going to, we only got 30 seconds, but China's going to be tougher.
Always.
Yeah.
China is their own thing. We have our own team working with China. They're their own thing. I'll leave the people who are working with China right now to give you a briefing on what they've accomplished and where they are. I'll leave it to them. But for the rest of the world, we're going to have things done by Friday. And Friday is not that far away. So you should expect, we said, August 1st is the date that we're setting all these rates. And they are off to the races after that.
Friday's close, and then Monday's close, unfortunately, too. Secretary, we got to go. Thank you very much. Good to see you. We'll be right back.